Brando Benifei. I am absolutely delighted to welcome Ambassador Andrew Puzder to our committee meeting. Mr. Puzder is the Ambassador of the United States of America to the European Union. We are very, very pleased to have you with us today, and we are looking forward to a constructive discussion. Colleagues, we are meeting at a moment when the international environment is changing in important ways. I don't have to describe this, with challenges such as the illegal war of aggression against Ukraine, Chinese rising global influence, and in general, a growing geopolitical competition. This is why it is particularly timely and very welcome to meet with you, dear Ambassador, early in your mandate to exchange views on the direction of our transatlantic partnership and on the many areas where our cooperation simply matters. The developments in the world, they affect us all, and they require coordination among partners. For that reason, our relationship with the United States remains so fundamental. The Foreign Affairs Committee's recent draft report on EU-US relations confirms this. Although the plenary vote on our report was postponed, it also reminds us that this partnership ought to be continued to evolve in a changing geostrategic environment. It needs to be coordinated and forward-looking, grounded in dialogue, predictability, and mutual respect. Ambassador, when our delegation visited Washington and Richmond, Virginia last July, we gained a clearer sense of both the new administration's foreign policy priorities and its approach towards transatlantic relations. We had a strong emphasis on national economic interests, on rebalancing trade relations, and on reducing strategic dependencies. At the same time, we also heard a clear expectation that Europe should take on greater responsibility for our own security, alongside a continued American commitment to NATO and the importance of a strong transatlantic bond. That general direction is also reflected in the new US national security strategy. So, we do not see this as a reason for distance, but as a reflection of a more mature partnership. Europe taking on greater responsibility for its own security and resilience is not only consistent with this expectation, it is in our own strategic interest. We agree with that because a stronger Europe does not weaken our partnership, it strengthens it. At the same time, the European Union continues to stand up for its interests and defend the international rule-based order. This Parliament firmly rejects any attempt to undermine the sovereignty and the territorial integrity of the Kingdom of Denmark, including Greenland. Let me conclude with a short historical reference. Speaking in Strasbourg in 1985, the great US President Ronald Reagan said that the Atlantic Alliance, quotes, proceeded not from transient interests of states, but from shared ideals, and that a strong and unified Europe was, quote, not a rival, but an even stronger partner. I believe that those words still matter. Once again, dear Ambassador, after having visited us in Strasbourg a few weeks ago, we are now delighted to welcome you in person here in Brussels. We very much look forward to hearing your views. You are very, very welcome. And I now give you the floor for an introductory statement of, let's say, 10, 15 minutes, and then we'll have an exchange of views. Welcome.
Okay. Thank you very much. It's an honor and a privilege to be here. Thank you, MEP McAllister, and also my friend out here, Brando Benifei, MEP Benifei. It's an honor. It was when President Trump asked me to be the ambassador to the European Union. I can't tell you how excited I was to accept. I think this is a very important position. I think the European Union holds a very prominent place in our history and our culture, and it is an honor to be here this afternoon with all of you. As ambassador, when I came here, my primary goals, the focus of my attention has been, number one, trying to get our trade agreement finalized, get the EU to approve the agreement and take the actions set forth in the framework for the trade agreement. So hopefully we're going to see some progress on that over the next few weeks. Is my buddy Bernd Lange in here? I'd have to give him a call out if he is. I don't see him. So
he chairs the trade committee.
Yes, I know. I was hoping he'd just show up, you know. I always like to see Bernd and talk about his motorcycles. So that's important. I think also in connection with the trade agreement, we have what we refer to as the non-tariff barriers to trade, which are the regulatory framework here in Brussels, which was covered extensively in Professor Draghi's report on competitiveness, which has an impact, obviously, on your economy and our ability to function within that economy. So regulatory issues have been a focus as well. Another area I wanted to focus on was our relationship, our joint relationship and our alignment on China. And I have to say, I was surprised on arriving how aligned we seem to be on the issue of China and some of its economic activities. Another was immigration, and again, I was surprised, and I'm still surprised how we're becoming more aligned on certain aspects of the immigration issue. I think that's something that's not fully appreciated by many of your allies. I think that as you move forward in that issue, I think it becomes something that needs to be better communicated. And lastly was the war in Ukraine. We all want to see an end to the war in Ukraine. Now, that's not something I've put a lot of focus into, as we have very qualified people negotiating with Ukraine and with Russia to try and bring an end to that war. But that's something I know that we all are aligned on and want to see end quickly. It is in the best interest of the United States that there be an economically prosperous European Union. The national security strategy, which was much maligned, actually has a section on Europe that I can't remember the exact name. I think it's called the Proposal for European Prosperity. And if you read into it a little bit, into the second paragraph, it says that Europe is strategically and culturally vital to the United States, and that it's a pillar of our economic prosperity. I think that well summarizes the relationship and how it should exist between the European Union and the United States. One of the issues that often comes up when I meet with various representatives is the issue of economic prosperity here in Europe. And I believe it's very important that Europe be a major participant in what I'll call the AI economy. Now, the AI economy involves a number of issues. It involves AI, obviously, but it also involves robotics. It involves multinomic scanning. It involves blockchain. It involves energy storage. There's a lot of aspects to it, all of which will be driving the economy going forward. I believe very soon, rather than saying AI economy, we can just say economy, because AI will dominate the economy. There's a very good, about 30-page document that came out of the White House, the National Economic Council last week. It was something written by a gentleman named Jacob Hellberg, who was formerly with one of the tech companies in Silicon Valley and now works at State, but he worked with the White House and wrote a document. It's called Artificial Intelligence and the Great Divergence. And in that document, he compares the AI economy, this movement to AI, to the Industrial Revolution, pointing out that in the days of the Industrial Revolution, if you industrialized, you became very prosperous. If you didn't industrialize, your country's probably not a whole lot better today than it was back when the Industrial Revolution hit. So being part of the AI economy is really essential to economic growth, and we could use a partner. This is a competition between the United States and China to get to the ultimate level of intelligence in the AI community. We're soon, I just saw Elon Musk today on, I probably saw him on Instagram or X, but he was commenting that he thought by the end of this year we would have AI as intelligent as a human. They would have human level intelligence, and within a few years we'd have AI that was as intelligent as all humanity combined. Now these are drastic and dramatic moves, drastic and dramatic changes. But I think it's important that the West, which includes the United States and Europe and the European Union, be the first to reach those levels of intelligence. To do that, you need really 5 things. You need energy, you need critical minerals, the rare earths, you need data centers, you need data, and you need the sophisticated software that makes the AI economy work. On the energy side, I hear a lot of discussion in Europe about energy, and I hear a lot of talk about sustainable energy and renewable energy. And I think all of that is great, but I think that discussion, whether or not you can have these renewable energy sources that are going to power an industrial economy, right now they probably can't. As you know, you have to import fossil fuels. Whether they could in 5 or 6 years or 10 years, if you've got enough solar panels, enough windmills, let's say that's an open question. But to generate the energy you need, not only to reindustrialize, not only to make Volkswagens, is kind of, yesterday's argument. Today's question is, do you have enough energy to reindustrialize and to power an AI economy? Because these data centers require a tremendous amount of electricity. So we need to talk very seriously about energy policy. The United States has committed in the Framework Agreement on Trade to provide $750 billion in energy to Europe, and the EU has agreed to purchase that. And I think you're probably going to need more energy than that to be active participants in this AI phase of the economy. Beyond that, we need critical minerals. The critical minerals, there's a conference, as you probably all know, coming up on February 4th in Washington, D.C., where the EU will be represented. We're very hopeful that we're going to come up with agreements so that we can, I guess, ring fence the production of these rare earth minerals so that we can't be held hostage to any one group controlling these minerals, and I'm hoping that those negotiations will go forward, just like I'm hoping the trade agreement negotiations will go forward. We need to cut an agreement with the European Union and then with certain member states. And the EU has asked that we not complete the agreements with the member states until we get an agreement with the EU, so obviously we're anxious to see that happen, and hopefully we'll see some progress on that in Washington, D.C. next week. The next 3 things you need are data centers, which are very expensive, $30 billion a piece to build them, data, and the sophisticated software. And the companies that can provide those, that want to build the data centers, which are very expensive, as I said, and really require a lot of capital investment, and that will collect the data and that have the sophisticated software, are very anxious to do business in Europe. In fact, they're doing business in Europe now. There's 7 or 8 very large American companies that are engaging in this business in Europe and would like to grow further. We've got 3,500 to 4,000 data centers in the United States. Don't hold me to the number. That's pretty close to what it is. In Europe, in the European Union, you've got about 1,200. You need more data centers. You need more data. You need to get that software here. And I have meetings in my at the embassy, with many companies and with many of you, but with many companies, and these tech companies come in and they say, Andy, we'd really love to grow in Europe. This is an incredible market. We love the people. We really would like to grow here. But every time we turn around, it seems there's another regulation, or the goalpost has been moved, or we're hit with a $100 million fine, which makes it very difficult to grow in Europe. And so that's something I think we need to address, not that you need to eliminate the legislation you have, the Digital Services Act, the Digital Marketing Act, but hopefully we can find ways to amend that legislation so that these tech companies can grow here more facilely. There was actually in Politico today, and I know not everybody is happy with Politico today, but I know our friend from Slovakia was not particularly happy. But this was the CEO of the Dutch chips giant ASML, which is the largest tech company that you have here in Europe. And his comment was that companies need to grow, and if they're going to grow, they can't be constantly annoyed by these onerous regulations. and that making things simple is good, but you can't make things very complicated and then simplify them a little and then be proud of it. Now, those aren't my words. Those are basically his words. But I think the point is well made. I know Europe is engaged and has been since Professor Draghi's report in simplifying the regulatory framework. I think that's essential if you're going to have the energy to participate in an AI economy, if you're going to have the companies that you need to work with to bring the resources to Europe to have an AI economy. And I will tell you that there are long-term benefits to AI, as we've discussed, but there's also shorter-term benefits. It's much like when the railroads went in the United States, or when the auto industry grew in the United States. You first had this massive capital investment, which drives economic growth, and then you get the benefits of what went into those capital investments for many, many years. In the U.S. now, we're in that stage of capital investment, and I'm sure you've all are familiar with the fact that our economy is basically a consumer-driven economy. The United States economic growth, GDP, grows based upon consumer purchases, basically, consumer activity. Over the last 3 quarters, when we've had GDP growth of 3.8%, 4.3%, and they're projecting 5.4% for the 4th quarter, the capital investment in AI has equaled consumer spending. So it has driven a very significant portion of that economic growth. And that's something that can happen here in Europe as well if we have a friendlier atmosphere in that respect. And as I said, this is important to the United States. I'm not here I'm not here to make arguments for what Europe should or shouldn't do, but I think it's to the benefit of the United States as well, because, as I said, a strong economic Europe is a stronger trade partner, better able to defend itself, and better able to help us in troubled spots across the globe where we're dealing with bad actors. So we very much want to partner with Europe. We're looking forward to the opportunity to do so. I think that cutting back on the regulatory maze will be very helpful in that respect. And I certainly hope that we can come to agreements on the trade agreement. You know, we have complied with what we said we would do on the trade agreement. We'd like Europe to now go through its process and then comply with what it agreed to do. And we'd like to get a critical minerals agreement where we can work together to try and make sure that we have what we need to participate in future economic growth. Again, it really is my privilege to be here. I've enjoyed meeting with so many of you and creating really friendships. I've been here 4.5 months. I feel like I've been here 4.5 years. I know with the relationships that we've already developed, people have been great. We don't always agree, but I found that everybody is always willing to talk and willing to work things through. I appreciate that, and I look forward to answering whatever questions you have. Is that about 10, 15 minutes, or you want me to keep going here?
Excellent, 14 and a half.
14 and a half, well, that's not too bad. All right, thank you very much. As I said, I appreciate being here, and I look forward to your questions.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Ambassador, for your introductory statement. I now give the floor first to our chair of the US delegation, Brando Benifei, for 3 minutes.
Well, we could speak for around 3 months.
I told my wife I'd be home for dinner.
I want to thank Ambassador Puzder for taking the time to be with us today. In times of tensions, it's very important that we keep the dialogue open. I want to apologize first that after my intervention, I will not be able to stay because of a concurrent commitment in Parliament, but also my Vice Chair, Vilmes, has joined, and I'm sure the exchange with the committee will be very lively. I will be very direct. The last weeks have marked a new law in transatlantic relations that will probably have long-lasting repercussions. Because when you threaten to take over an ally's territory, either through military force or through economic coercion, you are crossing a red line that should never have been passed. But Europe has also learned important lessons from the past weeks. We know now that when we stand together, we can be strong and have a healthy transatlantic relationship. As Ursula von der Leyen said in plenary last week, whether on our economy or on our security, whether on technology or democracy, we have to be strong in shaping ourselves if we want also to shape the world around us. While we certainly have our challenges, the very gloomy picture that many want to paint of a weak Europe is also flawed. 7 of the 10 best performing economies in 2025 were EU countries. So Europe should stop talking itself down and defend itself when others do, while continuing the necessary work of completing the single market and always maintaining an open and frank approach, especially towards our historic allies. 80 years after the end of the Second World War, we have reached a point where we need to rebalance the transatlantic relationship with important choices from our side. We Europeans can and must increasingly take charge of our own security. This was also requested from our American allies. Step by step, we are getting there. As expressed many times during the last weeks, we are committed to increase security in the Arctic. But the best way to stop Russia from being a threat in the Arctic is certainly to stop it from being a threat in Ukraine. It cannot be that the pressure is harder on Copenhagen than on Moscow. We Europeans are firmly committed to restoring peace, and we are also firmly committed to holding war criminals accountable and bring them to justice. We have learned the hard way that only then can you achieve true reconciliation and long-lasting peace. We have taken notice of the fact that 2 individuals for whom the International Criminal Court has issued arrest warrants have been invited to join the recently created Board of Peace. The United States and the EU face new and unprecedented challenges that require our adaptability, resilience and commitment to dialogue. Our partnership has been a long-standing source of prosperity and jobs on both sides of the Atlantic. I'm sure that by working together, we can overcome the challenges that lie ahead. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Brando. Before I give the floor to the next speaker, please, colleagues, slow down a bit. Our interpreters have difficulties if we speak too quickly. Ambassador, we have a standing rapporteur for the United States in our committee, and that is our colleague Michael Scherber, and I will now give him the floor for 3 slow minutes. Please.
Good afternoon to everybody. Mr. Ambassador, many of us in this room are US friends. As the former president of the NATO Parliamentary Assembly, I did a lot to strengthen our transatlantic ties. But we cannot keep quiet, seeing a radical shift in the US foreign policy. And also let me make sure that it is also in our report that, and the report highlights the need to preserve and strengthen EU regulatory autonomy, demanding full respect for the US sovereign decision-making and processes and institutional integrity. But let me concentrate my questions on documents and facts, as among friends we need clarity. First, the National Defense Strategy, published just a few days ago. It says that the War Department will incentivize and enable NATO allies to take primary responsibility for Europe's conventional defense with limited US support. Also, we are waiting for US Global Force Posture Review, which is a critical Pentagon-led reassessment expected to reshape military deployment. So my 2 first questions are, what we can expect with regard to the US military presence in Europe? Could you share with us whether the United States is considering an adjustment to the allocation of US forces worldwide? And in Europe, in particular, also in my country, Poland, it has a big role on NATO eastern flank. The second question is on Ukraine. Intelligence cooperation between allies has been a crucial element of Ukraine's ability to defend itself against Russian aggression. At the same time, there are reports also for Polish Foreign Minister Radosław Sikorski was concentrating on this. There are some reports that Russia's forces are using commercial satellite systems, including Starlink, to operate drones and significantly extend their range. How does the United States assess the problem, and what more can be the EU and the US do together, both on intelligence cooperation and in coordination with private companies, to prevent such technologies from being used by Russia against Ukraine? So thank you very much for your presence. As I said, we are among friends, we need clarity, but at the same time, the recent developments are not very optimistic to us, so please share your opinions with us on this. Thank you very much.
Right, thank you. Now it's the shadow rapporteur's turn, and the script for today's meeting says that they have 1.5 minutes time. The first shadow is Tonino Pizzola for the S&D. 90 seconds.
Thank you, David. Your Excellency, welcome to the European Parliament, our house of democracy, where we have for a long time fostered transatlantic ties and cooperation, which are these days under the severe pressure. Nevertheless, I would like to ask you 2 questions that concern some urgent geopolitical aspects. First, how do you view this proposal on the board of the peace? What is the real purpose of it, and how are you happy with the feedback so far? What did President Trump contemplated when he said there is a possibility to have a good cooperation with the United Nations? Practically, how does that correlate, and what is the ambition, having in mind current US reversal from a number of multilateral organizations? A second question goes to Western Balkans. Among the wars President Trump claimed he stopped, he recalled Serbia and Kosovo. In his first mandate, he called Kosovo then Prime Minister Hoti and Serbian President Vučić to sign a document. How are you satisfied with the implementation of this agreement, and is it foreseen to undergo an update of that initiative? Thank you.
Thank you, Tonino. For the PFE group, I understand that our colleague Tanja Correa will take the floor. There you are. 90 seconds.
No, Rapporteur, but you can speak afterwards because I have to leave. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Ambassador, for your presence here. I would like to congratulate your government, your executive, for the amount of peace deals done in a short period of time, number one. Number two, the patriots feel that NATO is the defender of Europe with, of course, the participation of the United States of America. And third, it's a question, which is, when are you considering to illegalize the Muslim Brotherhood and their offsprings in the United States? Another question now is geopolitical, Mr. Ambassador. You know, I'm Portuguese, and you are our biggest neighbors. I'm sorry to my Spanish friends. They are 3, and I'm Portuguese, but in fact, they are the land neighbors, but we are our continental platforms. Some of the biggest in the world are together, and we work together in that. And that's very important. And that turns me to my question. Are you ready to consider the Atlantic as a geopolitical center of the transatlantic relationship? Because the Atlantic, nobody speaks about, nobody does anything about it. The Russian ships pass by, the Chinese ships pass by, everybody passes by. We don't have the means. We are a small country, but it's essential that for the security, for socially, economically, that we consider the North Atlantic as an important part of the geostrategic center of the Northern Atlantic Alliance. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next for the ECR, Adam Bilan.
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Ambassador, thank you for this meeting and another opportunity to exchange opinions, especially at such an important moment in our relations. First of all, I want to say that I fully share your views on the problems with AI development in the EU, and that I would like to emphasize that my political group, ECR, did not support a number of wrong decisions made by this Parliament in the previous term. I have 2 questions. The first one, what concrete expectation does the United States have towards the EU in terms of defense capabilities, investment and burden sharing in order to strengthen our collective security? My second question concerns the Three Seas initiative. President Trump participated as a special guest at the Three Seas Initiative Summit in 2017 in Warsaw. What is the current position of the US administration toward this initiative? Thank you.
Thank you, Adam. For Renew, Hilde Woutmans.
Well, thank you very much. Here I am, Mr. Ambassador, and good to see you back. We saw each other also in Strasbourg. I have some very concrete questions, if I may. Can we expect predictability from the US in the coming month? Because what we saw last weeks, I must say, threatening an ally with violence and announcing increase in tariffs are not really signs of predictability, even if the threats are withdrawn later on. And can we trust that the tariffs agreed would remain the same? Or do we risk that the US unilaterally change the tariffs on the mood of the White House? That's the first question on the tariffs. Then on the second, you brought us in remembrance that the 4th of February, you will have a big meeting in Washington on the critical raw materials. As the president of the EU-Africa delegation, I really would love to have some more information on the peace agreement that was concluded in Washington between the US, Congo and Rwanda, because it's very hard to find really concrete details. And then the third, you mentioned it on China. There I really would love to hear from you. How do you see it now evolving? What can Europe do? Where can we support each other? Because I think on China, this parliament really has also a clear stance, but I really want to hear from you. How do you look at us towards China? Thank you very much.
Thank you. For the Greens Group, Sergei Lagodinsky.
Ambassador, it's great to see you again. Welcome here in the House. A couple of questions. Number one, as you know, this House has been debating and will be debating the question of confirming or not confirming the trade deal between Madam von der Leyen and Mr. Trump. One question, how can we make sure that despite our agreement, there will be no additional tariffs that Mr. Trump will decide on one occasion or another to impose on us? We would need some certainty before we decide. Number two, just 10 minutes ago, Secretary Rubio said that the security guarantees for Ukraine will look this way, that European troops will be stationed on the soil of Ukraine. That's what he said in the Senate. I personally think it's a good idea, but how would you convince Mr. Putin that, that he should accept this? Number three, if I may, if we proceed according to the plan that was proposed by your administration, the peace plan, one of the points is normalization of relationship with Russia, lifting sanctions and engaging economically. Do you expect European Union and European Union members to join this plan and to intensify economic relations? And would you coerce some of the countries or expect some of the countries to join even if they don't want to? Thank you very much and looking forward to continuing conversation.
Thank you. For the left, Mark Botenga, please.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Mr. Ambassador. You're a very privileged man, Mr. Ambassador of the United States. I think you're representing about the only country that could openly threaten the sovereignty of European nations and still receive a red carpet or a blue carpet treatment here. I mean, yes, you've threatened us with tariffs, you've threatened to take over Greenland, you know, you even now repeated that we should change some of our laws. Now, what I'm particularly interested in is in the national security strategy, you imply that you're very happy with the rise of what you call patriotic forces, but which is basically the far right in Europe. So my question is, has the US, be it through diplomatic missions, be it through intelligence services, stepped up its cooperation with these far-right forces, also in view of their servile attitude towards Washington, since this declaration? First question. Second question. In the first year, let's say, the United States have violated an impressive amount of international law rules. 8 countries, I think, you bombed in a year. You're now preparing to bomb Iran again, apparently. President Trump is saying who should govern Iraq and so on. My question is very simple. Do you consider that the United States are still bound by international law and the UN Charter? Thank you very much.
Thank you. And for the ESN group, Alexander Zell, 90 seconds, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ambassador, for visiting us, and thank you also for giving me the opportunity to speak after Mr. Botenga, because I represent one of these parties that he called as far right. And I also read Mr. Trump's national security strategy, and I quote, "Europe's economic decline is eclipsed by the prospect of civilizational erasure. The larger issues facing Europe include activities of the European Union that undermine political liberty and sovereignty, migration policies that are transforming the continent, censorship of free speech and suppression of political opposition, cratering birth rates and loss of national identities." I could not agree more. And as a member of the European Parliament, as a representative for AfD, I can say that we share your opinion. We are addressing the same issues that Trump identified as the root causes of Europe's civilizational erasure: migration policies, censorship of free speech, loss of national identity. That's why we are more and more popular with German voters. In fact, we are the strongest party in the polls. But instead of entering into an open debate with us, instead of facing the will of the voters, the other parties, ruling parties, are willing to prohibit us. They want to prohibit us. They use the Secret Service against us, and they want to outlaw our participation in democratic elections. I am very glad that the United States is aware of the situation in Europe, of democratic backsliding in Germany, in France, and in Romania. And I want to recall that our NATO alliance was founded as an alliance of democracies. NATO was meant to defend the free world. It says it is founded on the principles of democracy. So my question is, what's your opinion on the future of this alliance? And is the US willing to defend European democracies against its enemies from within?
Mr. Zell, you had enough time to ask your question.
Thank you.
It was a very long intro.
Thank you.
Now, colleagues, these ambassadors will be representatives of the political groups, representing the diversity in the European Parliament. Now I have this incredible long list of colleagues who want to take the floor. The ambassador told me he wants to be home for dinner at a certain time. Do you allow a few more colleagues to take the floor?
Sure.
And if you've had enough, just say stop. Look, I'll try and go through the list, but now it's 60 seconds each. And let's show the ambassador that we stick to the international rules-based order. And one rule is 60 seconds in this house. And I will turn off the micro at 65 seconds so everyone can speak. The first speaker in 60 seconds is for the EPP, Juliana Zovko.
Right. Honourable Ambassador, we have taken note of your assessments that the real source of trade instabilities lies in the fact that the agreement was designed to restore predictability and support growth on both sides of the Atlantic, not to be delayed by political positioning. This is a concern that we share. As the EPP Group's shadow rapporteur, I continue to advocate for the swift implementation of this agreement. Could you please confirm whether, once the agreement is implemented, we can expect constructive discussion on the remaining outstanding issues, in particular steel and aluminium, as Ambassador Greer emphasized during his visit to Brussels? And also I was made aware during my visit to US Chamber of Trade. So could you just confirm that this will be the outcome of our continuing negotiations and approval, or can we have it even before as a sign of concession for some of the disagreements that we had in the past?
Thank you. Next is Nacho Sanchez Amor.
I'm using Spanish to express our diversity for the ambassador. Embajador, no le envidio el trabajo.
Ambassador, I don't envy your position of using diplomatic language to represent a government that uses divisive language and that sometimes interferes in the domestic politics of certain member states. So let me just quote from your security strategy. The objective should be to support the United States to complete its trajectory, its authoritarian trajectory. We're not here to insult you, but we will be highlighting ethical problems. We're not going to be sending masked police to carry out and execute our policies in the Caribbean. Now, deregulation, that's your agenda. Let me highlight. When we talk about correcting certain laws that you're not the ones who are going to be correcting any laws. It's this Parliament, this House, that will be doing that, not United States companies or Dutch companies or any others.
Thank you. I'm going according to the D'Hondt list. Next is the EPP's Davor Stier.
Thank you, Chair. Ambassador, much to the regret to the colleagues from the left who sense that there is a lot of goodwill in this chamber for keeping the transatlantic relations. But you also sense that there are criticism, that there is a lot of concern about unpredictability in that relations. Basically, there is a distrust in the transatlantic relations. So the question is very easy: how to restore trust?
Thank you. Next is for the PFE group, colleague Girauta Vidal.
Thank you. Welcome, Ambassador. I don't have a question for you. I just want to welcome and I just want to thank you as a Spaniard. I am a member of the Spanish community, Hispanic community, and I want to thank your country for the arrest of Mr. Maduro, for setting the ways for letting democracy enter the country. And I want to thank you too, the way you put Cuba in front of their dictatorship nature. Second, you will find these bad manners here, because as you will learn in these institutions, we have a very biased language and a very biased ideas about international relationships. And I missed you because I have been 1 year having to cope with that bias, and I hope this is the occasion for an end to this. Thank you very much.
Thank you. The next is Mr. Gambino, ECR.
Grazie, Presidente, Eccellenza.
Thank you, Chairman, and Your Excellency. First of all, I'd like to thank you to what Mr. Benifei said. In such a difficult time, he was chosen a colleague for this delegation who is hostile. Now, this does not represent what my country wants to fields, and neither does the European Union. Now, I'd like to go back to what our President Giorgia Meloni said on Afghanistan. The mission started on behalf of NATO Article 5. In Italy, this meant a great commitment, and there was a loss of soldiers and the loss of human life. For this, some of the recent statements that were made has caused disappointment and bitterness, because this did not did not recognize the effort that was done in the field. What do you think of this, Mr. Ambassador?
Is Sophie Wilmes, 1 minute.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, Mr. Ambassador. You know that I stand for a strong transatlantic relationship, and I heard you and you said every time we turn around, we see a new regulation in Europe. And it made me think about every week there is something coming new from the US administration. When it's not tariff threats, it's the US security strategy. When it's not that, it's the EU digital regulation, or it's the Greenland, or it's tariffs again. And I'm not talking about Russia and other geopolitical wrongdoing. So my point is that I believe that the Parliament, when the Commission was discussing tariffs with the United States, was very ready to take his hit, thinking that it would buy us peace, prosperity, and also predictability. But it seems that it's not at all what we are going to receive. My question is, for you, do you honestly believe that the succession of events that are creating the favorable circumstances to sit at the table and make new deals? Thank you.
Thank you, Sophie. Next is for the EPP, our colleague Don Nascimento Cabral.
Muito obrigado, Presidente.
Thank you very much indeed, Chairman. I'll be speaking Portuguese. Your Excellency, the Ambassador, it's a great pleasure to have you here with us. And in these times of transatlantic relations, seeing some instability, I'd like to point out I come from the Azores, one of the oldest relationships with the United States. We have a base, military base, and that's being developed on one of our islands, I was listening very carefully to what you said about energy and the data centers. We have 2 Google investments in Azores, two different data centers. So my question is, we're going to be using renewable energy as a priority. So, of course, we're going to need energy, critical raw materials. So what is the strategy then from the United States side with regard to that and the cooperation in the Azores, one of the outermost regions of the European Union? Thank you.
Thank you all of you for sticking to 60 seconds. Next for the Greens is our colleague Lövin.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Ambassador, for your statement. I'm over here. So I have 2 questions. One on the trade deal that you're still hoping for. A week ago, your president threatened my country with a 10% additional tariff because we were supporting Denmark to the question of Greenland. So my question is, as colleagues, how can we trust the US? Second question, you mentioned Elon Musk and his prediction about general artificial intelligence, and you said that this will mean, he said that by 2030 it will surpass the intelligence of all humanity. Still, you really think that it's a good idea to deregulate the only continent that has some legislation to regulate the development, which could, in fact, also threaten all of humanity, because general intelligence means that the AI can act and operate independently, self-teach, and without our control.
Thank you. Next is Sebastião Begalho.
Thank you very much, Chair. Ambassador Puzder, thank you very much for being with us today. Good afternoon. Please take my comment as taken of good faith. Often when you talk with us, you look at Europe as part of the future of the United States. That's very good, but when I quote you back to my Portuguese colleagues, to international press, they look at me with disbelief. I have to tell you with no ill will that there's a big contrast between the diplomatic message and the political rhetoric that currently comes from the United States administration. So we don't know exactly who should we respond to. I'll give you an example. Recently, after the US security strategy, the administration published the defense strategy, and they described Russia, quote, as a persistent but manageable threat. If it's manageable, why is the territorial claims on Greenland so urgent? Thank you.
Thank you. Next, according to the DeHont list, will be our colleague Teresh. 1 minute.
Thank you. The first question is about the Black Sea region. Under President Trump, a new format was created, the C5+1, that it's talking or dealing with Central Asia. And for the Central Asia to have access to the rest of the world has to have access to a sea. So it's either the Black Sea through Azerbaijan, Georgia, or to the Mediterranean Sea through Azerbaijan, Armenia, if the trip corridor will be finalized, Turkey. How do you see this Central Asia focus of the current administration in conjunction with the strategy on Europe? This would be the first question. The second question is about the US troops in Romania and in Poland, if you can give us any updates on that. Thank you.
Thank you. According to my list, the last 3 speakers, the first is Nathalie Loiseau.
Je vais parler en français. Monsieur l'ambassadeur, je voudrais...
I'm speaking in French. Ambassador, let me quote you some of the data that came out of a recent survey that was published. Shows a crumbling of the image of the United States in Europe. 2/3 of people, respondents, describe US policy as colonizing and anti-Western. No, many people describe Trump as the enemy of Europe. And when we have disproportionate imbalance on the markets and tariff policy, the memory of soldiers who died in Afghanistan and their memory being insulted, it really hurts European policies in terms of and the image of the United States. So let me ask you 2 questions, Ambassador. Is Washington aware of the US's image suffering in Europe, and what is your strategy to turn the tide on that? Thank you.
Thank you. Arkadiusz Molarczyk.
Thank you, dear Mr. Ambassador. Thank you for joining today's meeting at the European Parliament, a discussion that matters greatly as transatlantic unity faces new tests. I would like to raise an enduring issue among European nations. 80 years after the Second World War, Poland and Greece have yet to receive fair compensation from Germany, estimated $1.5 trillion for Poland and $330 billion for Greece. There is also no agreement that would regulate or settle these consequences of Germany's aggression against Poland. Poland also preserves former German concentration camps, seats such as Auschwitz, but bears this cost alone, despite Germans' responsibility for this creation. Additionally, many works of art looted during the war remain in Germany and have not been returned. I have asked the European Commission to help mediate, but so far it has declined. Given President Trump's proven capacity to resolve difficult international disputes, I would like to encourage you, Mr. Ambassador, to invite his administration to motivate our friends, Germany, to engage constructively on this unresolved historical issue. Thank you.
Finally, Ms. Karlsbro.
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Ambassador, thank you for being here with us today. I'm from Sweden, a country with many strong ties to America. The past week was not a good one for the relations between us. But I think improved US-EU trade relations are of the highest importance to many of us, but they must be built on mutual respect. So I have two questions, and I know that many people in my country, in Sweden, are as curious as I am to listen to your answer. How do you want to re-establish respectful, predictable and constructive relations between us again? And how important is it for you to trade with the European Union? Thank you so much.
Right, that concludes the list of speakers. I've been informed that the interpreters will leave us at 6 o'clock, so unfortunately it might be that you will only hear the ambassador in English without interpretation. Andrew, that was quite a wide range of questions, and I give now the floor to you to answer them all.
Well, first of all, I can guarantee you that you'll...
Microphone, please.
Turn it back on. And you missed the joke. It's... So, a number of the questions relate to foreign policy from the United States and NATO policy. The questions that relate to NATO should go to Ambassador Whitaker, who is with NATO. I am not the ambassador to NATO and do not have the insights into the policies there as to where we're moving troops or where we're not moving troops. All I know, my friend from Poland asked the question about where were troops going to be, and the only thing I know the president said he might even add more troops to Poland. That's the last thing but that was just publicly, and I heard. But Matt Whitaker would know that, I think, much better than I would. On the questions that relate to Ukraine, it would be inappropriate, I think, for me to comment anything on Ukraine. There are negotiations going on right now. I'm not a negotiator in that process. That's as you know, Jared Kushner and Marco Rubio and Ambassador Witkoff. And I can't think of three better people to be negotiating, but I'm not in that group. And any comment I would make as a United States ambassador on issues relating to those negotiations, I think could impact them, which would be unfortunate because I really don't know what's going on in the negotiations. I'm not a party to them. A lot of the questions related to the relationship between the United States and the EU, and the people upset with comments that were made or the actions that were taken. I want to say I think that the most important questions that I got were, how are we going to repair that? Like, where do we go from here? How can we make this better? How can we get past the difficulties we've experienced? I think there are a number of things I'd like to say. Number one, I think the underlying relationship between the United States and Europe is extremely strong. I think most of us regard ourselves as European because our antecedents are the people who we see in our past all came from Europe. Personally, my entire background is European, as is my wife's. And not everybody in the United States has a European background, but I think our country was established on principles, many of which were developed in Europe and which we expounded on further in the United States. We're about to celebrate our 250th anniversary of our Declaration of Independence this coming July, and something we're very proud of, and there's going to be a big celebration. I hope you'll all come. But many of the ideas in there came from Europe, from European scholars and thinkers. This is something we respect. This is something we know. I think getting through these agreements will be important. I was asked, how can we know that the United States is going to abide by its commitments on trade? And I will tell you that, number one, we are already abiding by our commitments on trade. We have done everything we said we would do in the framework trade agreement, and we did it within a month of signing the document. Now, what has Europe done since then? Really nothing. And I understand it's due to the process. We all understand that there's a process to get through this, but the reduction of tariffs on cars to 15% for my German friends, or the reduction of tariffs on airplanes, airplane parts, generic drugs, resources that we don't have, natural resources that we don't have, such as cork, those are all taken down to zero. I mean, we've done under the agreement what we said we would do, and we have not stopped doing any of that despite what rhetoric has gone on over the past few months. All of those tariffs and agreements are still in place. I think it will be a huge advancement in the relationship if we can get this trade agreement confirmed, if we can get the mandate out of Parliament. We now, of course, as you know, the Commission has negotiated and approved it. The Council has issued its mandate, and if we can get our mandate from Parliament, I think that will make a big difference. And Mr. Shefkovich, Commissioner Shefkovich, and our Ambassador Greer and our Commerce Secretary Lutnick can get to work on trying to come up with a more particular agreement. But I think right after we get the mandate, and maybe you have to go through a trilogue procedure, I get that too. But once we get that done, I think we're going to be able to make real progress, and that will put a lot of concerns on the back burner. I also think it'll be important if we can get a deal on these rare earth minerals, because I think it will show that there's real unity between the United States and the European Union going forward, addressing not only the difficulties that face us culturally and strategically, but also the economic headwinds we're going to face going forward, which we can't address without these rare earth minerals. And as we all learned in the recent experience where those minerals were cut off for a period of time, or where the chips by that Belgian company were not being shared with our automotive industry, there are impediments to our moving forward that are not within our control. And if we can, as a unified group, get control of those impediments, I think we're all going to be more comfortable and more better off. Or I don't know if more better off is a good English phrase, but that's the one I used. Let's see here. There were a whole lot of questions here, so I have to go back through my notes. China, we are, as I said, evolving. I think there's been a significant movement in the EU with a realization as to the mercantilist practices, the coercive economic practices of China. And I think we have moved closer together on that. Somebody asked about that. Visibility on tariffs, again, I think that we need to get this. We've reduced our tariffs. We're waiting for the agreement to be fulfilled. We came to an agreement, and I think it was Commissioner Shefkovich who recently said, when we make a deal, we keep our deal. Well, that's what we need to do on both sides. We need to move forward and keep our deal. Do I think it's a good idea to deregulate AI. No, well, we have AI, right? We have an AI law in the United States. I think the difficulty is the young lady that asked me that's still here. But the difficulty is that when the AI Act that Europe has was passed, I think it was before there was ChatGPT. I mean, none of us really knew what was going on with AI. We need to have an AI Act that actually addresses the issues that we're facing now with AI. And it's, look, AI is being developed in China and the United States. I hear we're about 6 months ahead of China, but it's a race. It's a race. And I don't know that the EU passing, it's a Brussels effect type of regulation of AI is going to affect that race or is going to be a positive contribution. I think to the extent that we have AI regulation, it's something that the United States, the UK, and the EU should work together on. I believe we're already working with the UK, and I'd like to see us work with the EU on this as well. I'm not trying to kill time. One of the questions, I'm going to apologize to one of the gentlemen from Spain, but when they started interpreting for the first half of the question, they were interpreting it in a language that was neither Spanish nor English, and and so it was extra difficult for me I missed about half of that question. I mean, I think in general that pretty much covers what I was asked. Like I say, some of the questions I just can't respond to. Not that I wouldn't like to, but it would just be my opinion, and I would hate for my opinion to have a negative influence on policy, and which is not within my remit, as that term is used in diplomatic circles.
Dear Ambassador, thank you very much for attending today's meeting, and thank you for giving an introductory statement, listening to all the comments and questions, and giving a brief answer. Colleagues, this concludes today's meeting. I thank you for your participation, and I wish you a wonderful evening. The meeting is now closed.
Thank you, everybody. It was a pleasure to see you, and I hope I'll meet more of you in the future. Thank you. Thanks.
Right. Did you enjoy?